My father left me 3 things when he died: a rusty pickup truck, a deed to 100 acres of dust in Nevada called Pale Creek, and a letter. The letter didn't say, "I love you." It was a list of warnings. Lock the gate by sundown. Never answer a knock after midnight. And most importantly, never whistle at night. I thought he was senile. I thought it was just desert superstition. So I drove out there to fix up the place and sell it. I broke every rule on the first night. And now I know why he wrote that letter. The GPS lost signal 20 miles back. I followed the hand-drawn map until I saw the house. It sat alone in a sea of sagebrush and sand. It looked abandoned, but solid. As I parked the truck, I noticed something strange. Every window on the ground floor had heavy iron bars welded over it. Not the decorative kind. These were industrial rebar, thick and rusted. And the front door wasn't wood, it was reinforced steel with 3 deadbolts. "Overkill," I muttered, kicking a tumbleweed aside. The desert was silent. No birds, no crickets, just the wind hissing through the dry grass. It felt like the land itself was holding its breath. I checked the barn. My dad kept a few goats. I expected them to be dead from starvation, but the automatic feeder was still full. They were alive, but they were acting weird. Usually, goats are curious. These ones were huddled in the far corner, shivering. They weren't looking at me. They were all staring at the back wall of the barn. I looked at the wall. There was nothing there, just knotty pine wood. But near the roofline, about 10 feet up, I saw scratches, deep gouges in the wood. Too high for a coyote, too deep for a bear. Something had tried to claw its way in from the roof. I decided to walk the fence line before the sun went down. The barbed wire was torn in several places. Near the creek bed, which was bone dry, I found tracks. At first glance they looked human, barefoot. But I looked closer. The print was 18 inches long. The toes were spindly and stretched like fingers, and the stride, the distance between the steps, was over 6 feet. Whatever made these tracks wasn't running. It was walking casually, but it had legs twice as long as a man. A cold chill went down my spine, despite the 100-degree heat. I looked out at the horizon. Heat waves shimmered off the sand. Was that a cactus in the distance, or was someone standing there? The sun dropped below the mountains fast. The temperature plummeted. I hurried back to the house, remembering Rule 1, lock the gate by sundown. I was fumbling with the padlock on the chain-link fence when I heard it. Yip, yip, hoo, wow. A coyote. Standard desert sound. But then, the howl changed. It cracked mid-note. It turned into a gargled, high-pitched scream, like a woman laughing and choking at the same time. It sounded wrong, like something was trying to imitate a coyote, but hadn't quite practiced enough. I slammed the lock shut and ran for the steel front door. I didn't look back at the ridge. I locked all 3 deadbolts. I sat in the living room with my dad's old 12-gauge on my lap. The wind howled outside, rattling the iron bars on the windows. I checked my watch. 12:05 a.m. Rule 2-2, never answer a knock after midnight. Right on cue, knock, knock, knock. 3 slow, deliberate raps on the steel door. It wasn't the wind. It was knuckles on metal. I held my breath. From the other side of the door, a voice spoke. It was soft, polite, and terrifyingly familiar. "Hey Jake, it's me. I forgot my keys. Let me in." It was my dad's voice. My dad, who had been dead for 2 weeks. My hands shook as I leaned toward the door. I pressed my eye to the peephole. Under the flickering yellow porch light, I saw him. It was my dad. He was wearing his favorite flannel shirt. "Open the door, son. It's cold out here." He looked perfect, except for one thing. He wasn't blinking. His eyes were wide open, staring straight into the lens. And his smile, it was too big. It stretched past his cheekbones. It looked like someone was pulling his skin back with fishhooks. He wasn't standing still either. He was vibrating. A subtle, high-frequency twitching, like a glitching video file. I backed away, racking the shotgun slide. "You're not my father," I whispered. The thing outside went silent. The smile probably dropped. Then it spoke again, but the voice changed. First, it was a little girl's voice. "Please, mister, I'm lost." Then a deep guttural growl. "Open the door." Then the sound of a crying baby. It was cycling through its library. It was testing frequencies, trying to find the one that would make me open the lock. Finally, it settled on my own voice. "I'm gonna kill you, Jacob," it said, perfectly mimicking my own terror. "I'm gonna wear your skin." The footsteps on the porch moved away from the door. Thump, thump, thump. They went around the side of the house. I turned toward the living room window. A face appeared in the darkness. It pressed against the glass, right behind the heavy iron bars my father had welded there. It was pale, hairless. Its skin looked like wet dough. It didn't have a nose, just two slits. It raised a hand and gripped the iron bars. The fingers wrapped around the metal 3 times. They were long, multi-jointed, and tipped with black claws. It shook the bars violently. The whole house groaned. If those bars weren't there, the glass would have shattered in a second. It realized it couldn't break the bars. It stopped shaking them. It leaned its forehead against the glass, its black eyes locking onto mine. Then it did something worse than screaming. It puckered its lipless mouth and whistled. Hoo 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 hoo. It was a tune. Happy birthday. It whistled it slowly, mockingly. I remembered Rule 3, never whistle at night. It wasn't just a superstition. Whistling is a challenge. It was calling me out. It wanted me to whistle back, to accept the invitation. I bit my tongue so hard I tasted blood. I didn't make a sound. The face slid away from the window, disappearing into the night. For a moment there was silence. Then, crunch. Above me. Crunch, drag, crunch. It had climbed the drainpipe. It was on the roof. It walked heavily, pacing back and forth directly over my head. I followed the sound with the barrel of my shotgun. It stopped right above the fireplace chimney. I froze. The fireplace. I hadn't blocked the chimney. I heard a scratching sound inside the brickwork. It was coming down. The scratching inside the chimney got louder. Scritch, scritch, soot rained down onto the hearth. It was shimmying down the flue. I grabbed a bottle of lighter fluid from the mantel and sprayed the entire log pile. "Come and get it," I yelled. I struck a match and threw it in. Whoosh! The dry wood caught instantly. A roar of orange flame shot up the chimney. From the roof, a screech echoed down the pipe. An angry, startled animal sound. The scratching stopped. It scrambled back up to the roof. Fire was the one thing it didn't like. "I thought I won!" But a minute later, the smoke stopped going up. Instead, it billowed back into the living room. Thick, grey, choking smoke filled the air. The creature hadn't left. It was sitting on top of the chimney cap, blocking the airflow with its body. It was trying to smoke me out. I coughed, my eyes watering. I couldn't breathe. I grabbed the shotgun and crawled along the floor, heading for the kitchen. I had to leave the main room. It was forcing me deeper into the house. I kicked the kitchen door shut to block the smoke. I leaned against the counter, gasping for air. Then I saw it. The back door. The front door was steel, but the kitchen door was just old oak. The brass doorknob rattled. Click-clack. It was testing the lock. Then a heavy thud hit the wood. The doorframe groaned. Dust fell from the jamb. It knew where I was. It could smell me through the walls. Another hit. Crack. A hairline fracture appeared in the center of the wood panel. It wasn't going to hold. The back door was buckling. I looked around frantically. No windows I could escape through without being caught. Then I remembered the pantry. My dad used to store canned peaches in the root cellar. I ran into the pantry and kicked the woven rug aside. There it was. A trap door with an iron pull ring. Bang. The kitchen door splintered. A pale hand reached through the hole to undo the lock. I grabbed the iron ring and pulled. The hinges screeched, but the trapdoor opened, revealing a dark, earthen staircase going down. I scrambled down the stairs and slammed the heavy wooden trapdoor shut above my head. I slid the rusty bolt lock into place. Click. Seconds later, I heard the kitchen door explode inward upstairs. Crash. Heavy, wet footsteps walked across the linoleum floor. Thump, thump, it was inside. It walked right up to the pantry. It stopped directly above my head. I held my breath in the darkness, clutching my shotgun. I heard it sniffing, a loud, animalistic intake of air. Then it spoke through the floorboards. "I can hear your heart, Jacob." I waited for an hour. The footsteps upstairs stopped, but I knew it hadn't left. It was waiting. I couldn't go back up. I turned on my phone flashlight. The root cellar wasn't what I remembered. The shelves of canned goods were gone. Where the back wall should have been, there was a hole. A tunnel, hand dug into the hard-packed earth, shored up with old wooden beams. My dad dug this. I remembered the letter again. The warnings. He knew this thing was coming for him. This wasn't a root cellar. It was an escape route. I gripped the shotgun tight and stepped into the tunnel. The air in the tunnel was cool and smelled of damp earth. I moved slowly, careful not to trip. As I walked, I noticed marks on the walls. Someone. My father had drawn symbols in the dirt using white chalk. Some I recognized from books on local tribes, protection glyphs, wards against evil spirits. Others looked like something out of an old grimoire. Spiral patterns, crossed lines, eyes inside triangles. He was trying to keep something out or keep something in. Every 10 feet, there was a small pile of salt and sage on the floor. This wasn't just a tunnel, it was a gauntlet. The tunnel opened up into a small, round chamber. My light swept across the floor. It was a boneyard. Dozens of animal skulls, coyotes, deer, the missing goats were scattered everywhere. Most of the bones were broken, snapped open for the marrow. Then, my light caught something else. In the center of the room, half buried in the dirt, was a human skull. It was old and yellowed. This wasn't the first time someone had tried to live at Pale Creek. The creature didn't just arrive when my dad died, it had been here for a long time. My dad was just the latest person to hold the line. I found a small table in the corner. On it sat my dad's journal. I opened it. The handwriting was frantic, almost illegible. Sept 14th. It mimics the coyotes now, getting closer. Oct 1st. It wore Mary's face tonight. Almost opened the door. Must reinforce the bars. Nov 10th. I found the entrance to its lair. It's beneath the old well. It's not alone down there. I turned the page. There was a drawing. A tall, pale, emaciated figure with long arms standing over a pile of what looked like eggs. Underneath, he had written one word in capital letters: the mother. The tunnel sloped downward sharply. The air got warmer, thicker. It smelled of ozone and raw meat. I stepped out into a massive cavern. It wasn't natural. The walls were smooth, as if melted. In the center of the cavern was the nest. It was huge, a pulsing mound of gray flesh and bone, glowing with a faint, sickly bioluminescence. It looked like a giant, beating heart. From inside the gelatinous mass, I heard sounds. Weak, muffled cries. A baby crying. A woman weeping. My dad's voice whispering. It wasn't just mimicking them, it was storing their voices. And at the base of the nest, something was moving. I looked up. Clinging to the ceiling of the cavern was the mother. She was massive, at least 20 feet long. Her body was pale and bloated, fused into the rock itself like a tumor. She didn't have legs. She had dozens of long, translucent feelers that hung down into the nest, caressing the pulsing sacs. She was blind. Her face was a smooth, white mask with a lipless slit for a mouth. She was the source. She wasn't just birthing them, she was feeding them. And the food was sound. Every time a sac vibrated with a stolen voice, she shuddered in pleasure. She was drinking the screams. I took a step. My boot crunched on a bone. The mother froze. Her feelers stopped moving. Then, The nest screamed. It wasn't a single scream. It was a choir of the damned. Hundreds of voices, men, women, children, animals erupted from the flesh sack simultaneously. "Help me! Run! Mummy, let me in!" And cutting through it all, loud and clear, was my father's voice. "Get out, Jacob! It's a trap!" The sheer volume brought me to my knees. My ears rang. The mother lowered her massive head, her blind face turning toward my heat signature. She opened her mouth, revealing rows of needle-like teeth. Through the noise, I saw something near the main support beam of the cavern. Red sticks, duct tape, wires, dynamite. My dad hadn't just been hiding down here. He had been planning an extermination. He had rigged the main pillars to blow, to bring the whole mountain down on top of her, but he never got the chance to pull the trigger. The detonator was lying on the ground near the tunnel entrance, covered in dust. I was standing 50 feet away from it. The mother let out a screech that shook the stalactites. From the shadows behind the nest, the mimic, the one from the house, stepped out to protect its queen. The mimic charged. It moved on all fours, faster than a cheetah. I raised the 12-gauge. Boom! The buckshot hit it square in the chest. It flew backward, crashing into a pile of bones. Black tar sprayed from the wound. But before I could rack the slide, it was up again. The wound was already knitting itself together. "Die!" I screamed. "Boom!" I took its leg off. It screeched and stumbled, crawling toward me with 3 limbs. It wasn't trying to kill me anymore. It was trying to stop me from reaching the detonator. I sprinted for the tunnel entrance, leaping over the rocky debris. The mimic grabbed my ankle. Its grip was like cold iron. I kicked it in the face, feeling its nose cartilage crunch. I lunged forward, stretching my arm out. My fingers brushed the dusty plunger box. I grabbed it and slammed the handle down. Click, K.A., boom. The explosion was deafening. The shockwave threw me into the tunnel wall. The wooden supports disintegrated. The ceiling of the cavern gave way. Tons of rock and earth came crashing down. The mother screamed, a sound that shattered the remaining stalactites as a massive boulder crushed her bloated body. The cave began to collapse. I scrambled up the tunnel on my hands and knees, the roar of falling earth chasing me. The roar of the explosion faded, replaced by the terrifying sound of the earth settling. The tunnel behind me collapsed. A cloud of choking dust washed over me. I couldn't see. I couldn't breathe. I crawled blindly up the slope, dragging my body through the dirt. The wooden beams above me groaned. The shockwave had weakened the entire structure. If I stopped moving, I would be buried alive. My hand hit something hard. The trap door. I pushed. It didn't budge. Debris from the kitchen had fallen on top of it. I slammed my shoulder against the wood. Nothing. I used the stock of the shotgun as a battering ram. Thud, thud, crack. A sliver of light pierced the darkness. I pushed harder, snapping the rotten wood. I clawed my way out of the hole, gasping for fresh air. I was back in the kitchen, or what was left of it. The explosion had cracked the foundation. The walls were leaning inward. The roof had partially collapsed, letting beams of morning sunlight cut through the dust. The house was dying. I stumbled out the front door, falling onto the dry desert sand. I scrambled away from the house, getting to the truck. Then the ground shook one last time. R.U. Emble. The root cellar collapsed completely. I watched in awe as the ranch house legacy on O aimed and tilted. It sank into the earth, swallowed by a massive sinkhole where the cavern used to be. Within seconds, the house was gone, just a pile of splintered wood and dust in a crater. The mother was dead. The nest was buried. It was over. I didn't stick around to mourn the house. I jumped into the old Ford. My hands were shaking so violently, I dropped the keys on the floor mat. Come on, I screamed, fumbling for them. I jammed the key into the ignition and turned it. Chug, 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 the engine sputtered. Don't you do this to me, I begged. ROAR. The engine caught. I slammed it into gear and floored it, tires spinning in the sand as I sped toward the main road. I just wanted to see pavement. I drove for 50 miles without blinking. When I finally hit the interstate, I allowed myself to breathe. I was safe. My ankle was throbbing where the mimic had grabbed me. I looked down. There was a bruise in the shape of a hand, but it wasn't purple. It was black, and it was spreading. Dark, ink-like lines were crawling up my calf, tracing my veins. It burned, not like a cut, but like ice. I remembered the black tar that sprayed from the creature when I shot it. It had touched me. It had marked me. I pulled into a truck stop diner. I needed food. Real food. I ordered a burger, rare. When the waitress set it down, the smell made me gag. The cooked meat smelled like burning hair. I pushed the plate away. My eyes drifted to the open kitchen. The cook was prepping steaks. A slab of raw, bloody beef sat on the counter. My stomach growled low, guttural sound that didn't feel human. My mouth watered. I wanted it. Not cooked. Raw. I threw a 20 on the table and ran out. I couldn't be around people. I got back on the road. I turned on the radio to drown out the hunger. Static filled the cab. Then a voice cut through the white noise. "Did you think you could leave, Jacob?" I slammed the off button. The radio stayed on. "You carry the seed now. You are the vessel." It was my dad's voice again. I ripped the radio unit out of the dashboard, sparks flying, and threw it out the window. But the voice didn't stop. It wasn't coming from the speakers. It was coming from inside my head. I checked into a cheap motel. I felt feverish. My skin felt too tight, like a suit that didn't fit. I went to the bathroom and splashed cold water on my face. I looked in the mirror. My eyes, the pupils were elongating, becoming horizontal rectangles, like a goat, like it. I scratched an itch on my cheek. A layer of skin peeled away like wet paper. Underneath, there was no blood, just smooth, pale, doughy flesh. I screamed, but the sound that came out wasn't a scream. It was a high-pitched yip, a coyote sound. I sat on the bed, shaking. The hunger was unbearable. The noise in my head was a cacophony of voices. Then, from the parking lot outside, I heard it. Hoo-hoo! Hoo-hoo! The whistle. It wasn't mocking me this time. It was calling me home. My body moved on its own. I stood up. My joints popped and rearranged themselves. I felt taller, lankier. I didn't want to run away anymore. The city was too loud. The desert was quiet. The desert was hungry. I grabbed the truck keys. I wasn't going to the hospital. I drove through the night. I passed the "Welcome to Nevada" sign. I passed the turnoff for the hospital. I headed straight back to Pale Creek. The infection wasn't killing me. It was changing me. My dad died fighting them. He tried to destroy the nest. But you can't destroy nature. You can only manage it. The mother was gone. The mimics were scattered. They needed a new leader, a new father. I pressed the gas pedal down. My bare foot looked longer than it did yesterday. My toes gripped the pedal like fingers. I parked at the edge of the crater. The sun was setting, painting the sky in bruises of purple and orange. The house was gone, but the tunnels remained. I could feel them vibrating beneath my feet. I walked to the edge. I took off my sunglasses. The light didn't hurt anymore. I looked down into the dark abyss. Usually, silence is peaceful. But to me, it was loud. I could hear every beetle scuttling in the sand. I could hear a coyote breathing a mile away. I wasn't Jacob anymore. Not entirely. Movement in the shadows. One by one, they crawled out of the crevices. The survivors. Small, pale, emaciated things. They were young mimics, orphaned by the explosion. They hissed at me at first, baring their needle teeth. I didn't flinch. I let out a sound. Not a word, but a frequency. A deep, vibrating hum from my chest that no human could make. They froze. They tilted their heads. They recognized the sound. It was the sound of authority. They lowered their heads. They accepted me. Headlights cut across the desert floor. A car pulled up to the broken gate. I heard laughter, music, teenagers, exploring the haunted ranch they heard about in town. They stepped out of the car, kicking beer bottles, ignoring the "keep out" signs my father had painted. The little ones around me hissed, hungry for the voices. I raised a hand, silencing them. "Patience," I whispered. My voice sounded like dry leaves scraping on pavement. I needed to protect this land, and the best way to keep people away is to make sure no one ever comes back to tell the story. I watched them cross the fence line. They were trespassing. I remembered my father's harsh rules. 1. Lock the gate. They broke it. 2. Don't answer the door. They were knocking on my land. 3. Don't whistle at night. I stood on the ridge, silhouetted against the full moon. I pursed my lips. Hoo 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 hoo. The teenagers stopped laughing. They looked up at the ridge. One of them pointed at me. "Is that a person?" I smiled. My smile was too wide. Not anymore, I thought. The hunger took over. I dropped to all fours. My bones shifted, locking into place for the hunt. My father tried to kill the monsters. He failed. I found a better solution. I became the monster. Now, Pale Creek belongs to me. And we are always looking for new voices to add to the chorus. I let out a scream, missed perfect imitation of a coyote, mixed with a human laugh, and sprinted down the dune. The end.